found out that our daughter had passed from the hotel. The fiance did not reach out to us.
Y'all, this isn't just a tragic death anymore. This is a warning that may have been ignored. A hidden video has surfaced, allegedly recorded just hours before everything went silent. In that clip, Ashlee Jenae doesn't look like the woman we saw online. No filters, no perfect angles, no fairy tale energy. Her voice is shaking, her eyes don't match the life she was posting, and then she says it. "Please save me. If anything happens to me." She names Joe McCann. The video cuts. No context, no follow-up, just silence. Hours later, she's gone. Authorities quickly label it self-inflicted, case closed. But now this clip is everywhere, and it doesn't match that narrative. Because how does someone go from celebrating a proposal in paradise to allegedly recording a fear-driven message to being found unresponsive within the same timeline? And what happened in the 11 hours, no one can fully explain. No clear sequence, no complete transparency, just gaps. Now, with reports of rising pressure, relationship tension, and a digital trail under scrutiny, the situation is escalating. Sources say federal attention is building, and every detail is being re-examined. So the question isn't just what happened that night, it's this. Did she try to tell us before it was too late?
My money is still on the husband, and not because he's white, but because this was her birthday trip. She went and got a new wig, got her lashes did, nails did, toes did, picked out outfits, and created an itinerary for her birthday. She had no idea that this man was going to propose to her in such a beautiful place like Africa. She would have been ecstatic. It's my birthday and my man is proposing to me? Hell yeah. I do not feel like anywhere in her mind it would have been, it's my birthday, my man is here, he didn't propose to me. This is a great time to just end it all.
Baby, maturing is knowing that a white man can change my life with his money, and he can take it from me with his money, and then he can go get a motherfucking lawyer with his money and get away with that shit.
This story doesn't begin with a discovery. It begins with a message that was never meant to surface. A clip, short, unstable, allegedly recorded in the final hours, has now forced its way into public view. In it, Ashlee Jenae is not performing for an audience. There are no curated angles, no controlled lighting, no hint of the polished life she had been sharing. What replaces it is urgency, a voice that trembles, words that don't align with the narrative that followed. She asks for help. She suggests that if something happens, responsibility should be directed toward Joe McCann. And then the recording ends. No explanation, no continuation, just a cutoff that leaves more questions than answers. Within hours, she is found unresponsive.
I just spoke to the family of Ashlee Robinson. She's the 31-year-old influencer who was on vacation with her fiance celebrating her birthday. He actually proposed on the trip. But something crazy happened. She was having a good time. Her family said she was very excited to be there, shared pictures with the family, FaceTimed them when she was proposed to. But they released a statement saying that Ashlee was found unconscious in her villa and was rushed to a local hospital where her death was confirmed.
Local authorities move quickly. The conclusion is delivered with confidence. Self-inflicted. A closed case, at least on paper. A tragic outcome framed as a personal decision, isolated from everything around it. But the timeline refuses to stay contained, because just before everything ended, there was conflict. Reports indicate an argument intense enough to draw attention inside a luxury resort in Zanzibar, staff intervention, separate rooms, a sudden fracture in what had, moments earlier, been presented as a flawless engagement, two opposing realities unfolding within the same night. One version shows celebration, an orchestrated proposal shared publicly, amplified across social platforms, a future announced in real time. The other version, emerging only through fragments, suggests instability. Raised voices, distance, a shift that no audience could see while it was happening. And between those realities sits a gap that has become central to the entire case. 11 hours. That is the reported delay between when Ashlee was found and when her family was informed. Not minutes, not a brief logistical lag. 11 full hours where the sequence of events becomes unclear, where decisions were made, calls were placed, and actions were taken outside of public view. Time like that reshapes narratives. It introduces uncertainty into what would otherwise be a straightforward account. It forces attention away from the official conclusion and back toward the process that led there. Who was contacted first? What information was shared? What steps were prioritized before the family even knew something was wrong? There are no complete answers to those questions, only fragments.
She was starting the next chapter of her life. She called us and FaceTimed us to share with us her travel.
Ashlee's mother says she never would have expected that less than a week later, her daughter would be dead. On April 8th, she says Ashlee called saying she and her fiance got into an argument and were moved to separate rooms. The next day, she received another call, this time from her fiance.
He told me that Ashlee did something to herself and that she was being taken to the hospital. I said, what happened, when? And he told me it had been 11 hours prior.
Hours later, the luxury resort the couple was staying at called saying that Ashlee...
Those fragments begin to form patterns. The relationship itself is no longer viewed through the same lens. What appeared polished now carries reports of tension. Not constant, not fully documented, but present enough to align with what reportedly unfolded that night. Financial pressure adds another layer. Information has surfaced suggesting instability tied to prior ventures, significant losses, expectations from investors, a landscape where decisions are no longer isolated, they are influenced. When financial strain intersects with personal relationships, the dynamics shift. Then there are the missing pieces, expected elements that have not been publicly clarified, surveillance that should outline movement, communication that should define intent. Instead, there are gaps, areas where clarity should exist but does not. And now, the video. Its presence doesn't resolve anything. It complicates everything, because it introduces intent that contradicts the official narrative. A request for help does not align with a decision to withdraw. A warning does not align with silence. It reframes the final hours not as an internal collapse, but as a moment of perceived threat, allegedly captured in her own words. That is why the situation is no longer contained at a local level. With growing scrutiny, attention has escalated beyond initial authorities. Reports indicate that Federal Bureau of Investigation interest has been triggered, shifting the case into a broader scope. When that threshold is crossed, assumptions are revisited, evidence is re-examined, timelines are rebuilt, nothing remains fixed. And as each layer is pulled back, the original explanation begins to feel less complete. Because this is no longer just about a final moment, it is about everything that led into it, and everything that may have followed after.
We're not too sure what happened. That's what we're trying to find out. I got 2 emails today from the embassy in Zanzibar, and it said the investigation is still ongoing. That we have not determined the cause of death yet at all, and the investigation is still ongoing and still pending right now. So there has nothing official has been released. That's what we're trying to find out. We just want answers. We just think it's very odd that our daughter is traveling with Joe, and we don't hear anything from Joe. To me, that's very odd. And initial call that she got from Joe was 11 hours after something had transpired in the room. And that's very odd. 11 hours later,
11 hours.
Something had transpired, and Joe just relayed to Yolanda that Ashlee was okay and she was stable and she was okay and don't worry about it.
But that she was at the hospital.
The deeper the timeline is examined, the less it behaves like a closed case, and the more it resembles a sequence that never fully aligned in the first place. Focus shifts to the hours just before everything went silent. Not the public moments, the proposal, the curated footage, the carefully framed celebration, but the private stretch that followed. The argument is no longer a side detail, it becomes a pivot point. Witness accounts place it as intense, disruptive, impossible to ignore. Staff intervention wasn't precautionary, it was necessary. Separation into different rooms wasn't symbolic, it was enforced. That separation matters because it redraws the final known positions. It establishes distance. It isolates timelines. And from that point forward, there is no shared narrative, only parallel possibilities that never reconnect in a verifiable way. Inside her room, Ashlee Jenae is last associated with a small but revealing action, a request for a phone charger. On the surface, it appears trivial. In context, it becomes significant. Charging a device suggests continuation, communication, documentation, contact. It suggests intent to reach outward, not withdraw inward. After that request, the record goes quiet. No confirmed calls, no verified messages, no final interaction that explains what followed. Just a cutoff point where activity should exist, but doesn't. Attention turns to the infrastructure around that silence. A high-end resort is built on surveillance. Movement is typically documented. Corridors, entrances, transitions between spaces. Not as an exception, but as a standard layer of security. Yet, in this case, no complete visual timeline has been publicly established. No sequence that maps who moved where and when in the critical window after the argument. That absence doesn't prove anything on its own, but it removes a tool that would otherwise clarify everything. At the same time, the digital layer begins to raise its own questions.
All right, hear me out. and maybe this is just me, but I just thought about it because I was driving on my way home. I'd really be ready to cut a nigga off over smoke. Like the littlest thing, I'd just be turned off, like ugh. It was mad people in the regular lane, and the express lane was clear as I'm zooming through that, passing, feet. As a grown man in 2023, living in the state of Florida, specifically Dade County, Broward County, doing without a sun pass. Like honestly, you want to just vibe in traffic, to take you 15 minutes to get somewhere. You want to chill out for the next 45 minutes sitting in a regular lane for what? It ain't gonna work with me, baby. It ain't gonna work. I ain't gonna lie. I'm talking about, yo, babe, get over into the express lanes faster, Nah, like I ain't finna do all that. Drive over them.
Online activity attributed to Joe McCann during and after the incident has been noted, not as definitive evidence, but as behavior that appears detached from the severity of the situation. Posts continue. Updates appear routine. The contrast is difficult to ignore, not because it confirms intent, but because it complicates perception. Then there are reports, unverified but persistent, suggesting that certain content connected to their time together was removed. If accurate, that introduces another variable, not just what was shared, but what may have been altered or erased. Patterns don't need to be proven individually to influence how a case is viewed. They accumulate. Financial context adds weight to that accumulation. Prior ventures tied to McCann are reported to have faced substantial losses, investor pressure, strategic pivots. An environment where outcomes carry consequences beyond reputation. Again, none of this establishes causation, but it introduces motive frameworks that investigators typically consider when timelines fracture. Overlay that with the mention of a possible insurance policy, details not fully confirmed, but enough to circulate, and the narrative branches further. Individually, each element remains inconclusive. Together, they resist dismissal. The official account remains unchanged. Authorities maintain that there was no foul play. The explanation is consistent, documented, and on the surface definitive. But consistency does not eliminate contradiction, because the most persistent issue is not a single detail. It is the convergence of multiple uncertainties, the argument, the separation, the request for power, the absence of communication, the missing clarity around movement, the digital behavior, the delayed notification, and at the center of all of it, the 11-hour gap. Time that cannot be compressed, time that cannot be explained away as procedural delay without further context, time that invites reconstruction. What occurred during those hours is not publicly established, but the existence of that window ensures that the case cannot remain static. It demands re-examination, not because of speculation, but because of incompleteness. That is why the alleged video changes the trajectory. It does not provide answers. It reframes the questions. A request for help, if authentic, introduces intent that conflicts with the official conclusion. It suggests awareness, not withdrawal. It implies perceived risk, not isolation. And once that implication exists, every prior detail must be reconsidered through a different lens. This is where the scope expands. With reported interest from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the case enters a phase where assumptions are no longer sufficient. Independent review, forensic analysis, digital reconstruction, processes designed to test narratives against evidence, not align with them. And when that process begins, timelines are not accepted. They are rebuilt. Because the question is no longer confined to what was concluded. It is whether that conclusion can withstand everything that is now emerging. By this stage, the case no longer behaves like a closed file. It behaves like a sequence under pressure, where every detail that once felt settled begins to shift under closer inspection. The alleged video is now central to that pressure, not because it proves a single outcome, but because it introduces a competing version of Ashlee's final state. In that clip, Ashlee Jenae is not detached or fading. She appears alert, urgent, focused on being heard. A request for help is not a passive act. It is deliberate. It is directed outward. And that matters, because it conflicts with the simplicity of the official conclusion. If the final hours were defined by internal collapse, the expectation is withdrawal, silence that precedes an irreversible decision. But a recorded warning suggests the opposite. It implies awareness of risk. It implies a belief that something external could happen. It reframes the final window as a period of concern, not resignation, allegedly captured in her own words. That shift forces attention back onto the timeline. Reconstruction becomes unavoidable. The argument is no longer an isolated incident. It becomes the last confirmed interaction before separation. Separate rooms mean separate environments, separate opportunities, separate narratives that must now be aligned without direct overlap. From that point forward, there is no shared account, only fragments, a request for a charger, a gap in communication, a discovery that ends the sequence, and in between, unresolved time. The 11-hour delay is no longer just a troubling detail, it becomes structural. It is the space in which explanations either hold or break. Every action taken within that window carries weight because it exists before external oversight begins, before family involvement, before broader scrutiny. What happened in those hours is not fully documented in the public record, but the absence of detail does not reduce its importance. It increases it. Attention then turns to behavior, how individuals act when the sequence begins to collapse. Online activity associated with Joe McCann during that period and immediately after has been examined, not as proof of intent, but as a point of contrast. Public-facing updates appear routine. Tone remains consistent. There is no visible disruption that matches the severity of the reported event. Behavior alone does not determine outcome, but when behavior diverges from expectation, it invites scrutiny. Digital traces add another layer. Reports of removed content